Hello, my name is Virgil and this is Literally Books. Today I want to talk about Isaac Asimov's The Gods Themselves. It starts with a scientist, Hallam, who has had this little jar of tungsten on his desk, and he looks at it and says, someone's been messing with this tungsten. Who has it? And he's accusing people of messing with things on his desk, and somebody says, nobody's touching your stuff. Why would anybody have any interest in it? And how do you even know what that is anyways? You don't know anything, which really upsets Hallam. And he goes and, does some research on this and finds out it really isn't tungsten anymore. It's plutonium-186. This shouldn't exist, and that it's decaying. It's changing its state the longer it's in our universe. And this begins some experiments which ultimately lead to Hallam heading a project for an electron pump where energy is transferred from one dimension into ours for essentially free energy. This is a Barlow's Guide read for me. This is the aliens from this book. The extraterrestrials are featured in Barlow's Guide, and I will show that at the end. The book essentially is 3 parts. First section, this new technology and how, and sort of like backstabbing academia and like scientists, just really angry at each other, because someone was slighted. That's how the whole discovery begins, and then there's sort of a reciprocation of that nastiness, and new researchers coming into the field and sort of being ostracized because they question the legitimacy of the electron pump, if it's truly safe or not. And it really does a great job with, you really feel the frustration and anger that those characters have. And I really like that. It really kind of feels like maybe Asimov had witnessed this to some degree or another. The second portion of the novel is all about the aliens and what happens there. I'm not going to give away too much here. And then the third part is back with humanity again, and sort of wrapping up the problem that the electron pump has created. And the whole story is really about energy and how energy functions. It's a really great sort of illustration of how all energy is downhill. Everything, there's always an energy loss. There's always entropy, right? There's always things go from a high energy state to a low energy state. It dissipates. And the whole electron pump essentially resolves that, because it says, well, this energy is essentially free. We're trading elements between two universes, and that allows both of us to have basically free energy. There's just a little problem with that. So I'm going to talk about the experience of the book, and then I'll put spoiler stuff at the end. Incidentally, I thought it was kind of funny, in doing a little bit of research for this, that the idea for the story originally came from a conversation with Asimov and Robert Silverberg, where Silverberg needed like a random isotope, and he just said, plutonium-186, and Asimov's like, there is no such thing. And then Silverberg dared him to write a story about it, and Asimov said, okay, fine. And so he took this thing and said, well, what kind of universe would have to exist for plutonium-186 for that isotope to exist? And that generated this, what was going to be a short story, and then his editor said, oh, no, you should make this a novel. And he did. So it's really a fun novel to read. It's really kind of, again, like, to have someone talk about it, it doesn't sound very exciting, but Asimov has a really great ability to talk about science, like a lot of these mouthpieces for science in the 70s, it seems like, in 60s and 70s. Great ability to talk about science that isn't boring. It keeps you interested. You get kind of excited about it. And that's kind of what happens here. It moves forward very well. I don't think the story is slow. I think it's also written in a way that's very accessible for somebody who just doesn't read a lot of science fiction. I do feel that somebody who I think any modern reader who's interested would not have a problem with this book, even though it's hard science fiction. And I think even though it's, we're talking about a book from the 70s, so obviously the science is a bit dated, but even then it's pretty accurate, or it's accurate as it could be for that time, with a little bit of speculation, because it just sort of has to happen. For someone who's interested in hard science fiction, wants to try something, I think this is a really great place to start. Very accessible. The only little, I don't know if it's really a complaint or not, is that the aliens, who are very different from humans, have this sort of like 1950s, 1960s sort of feel to them, sort of, in the way that they talk and things. Obviously, they're alien, but they're not like bizarre, like unknowable alien entities. They're not like Lovecraftian horrors or something like that, right? They have sort of a 1950s, 1960s sort of feel to them, which is makes it a little silly sometimes, but I think it just humanizes them. So while we lose the sort of strangeness that we might have gotten, what it does is it allows Asimov to sort of give these aliens character. We can actually see their inner thoughts and listen to them and hear them converse and understand and follow them, and not just sort of be going, I don't really know what these guys are talking about. In that alien section, there's a conundrum, a problem that those aliens have. The aliens in here, the soft ones as they're called, have three forms. There's an emotional, a rational, and a parental. The rational and the parental are normally more solid-ish. They're not, they don't really like to, it's sort of taboo for one soft one to touch or come in contact with another normally, unless it's some sort of a mating ritual. Melting is what they call it. The emotionals, which are usually seen as very flighty, are they the ones who sort of like don't have a problem with that as much. But even then, it's sort of seen like taboo, like it's sort of like risque to sort of do those things in the outside of the bedroom, so to speak. The characters that we see are the characters who end up communicating with humans. It's really great because they're unique among their kind. It's a really fun, and there's sort of a problem that these aliens have, even with their own society, where they sort of feel like they've discovered something, that there's a dark truth to their people and the hard ones, which are these elders, which are a separate entity that exists, who seem to have all this knowledge and live forever. And there's a sort of a problem where the soft ones feel that they are being manipulated by the hard ones. And this is all just in the middle of the book, right? That's a whole separate, you could just cut that out and just have that whole section by itself. I mean, it works best if it has the rest of the story with it. And then that last part takes place on the moon and deals with some of the problems of the electron pump. So this is a really great sort of commentary, I guess, by Asimov on sort of our modern society and energy use and and the fallout and the problems with energy, because there's a problem with the electron pump that it could potentially be world threatening. And it's just sort of, nobody wants to give it up. Even when nobody wants to see the evidence, nobody wants to acknowledge the evidence. It doesn't matter. It's fine. Everything's fine right now. The things you're talking about are so minor. It doesn't matter. Is definitely the attitude. Men who have found the problem are having a difficult time feeling like they can be heard, for one, because they have a grudge against the creator of the electron pump, and it's sort of like this burden of proof to prove that something is so useful and so attractive is bad is almost insurmountable. And I think what's great is not always Asimov sort of talk about how new technology can get adopted, and maybe it's not ideal, but that's what we got, and sort of work through what a solution might be, a way to get away from something like that. Basically, the solution that he presents is one of, you need something better. You can't cancel it. You can't take it away. That won't work. People won't accept that. You have to have something else to go to, a new shiny thing, so to speak. And I really like that approach because it feels correct. It feels as though that's what it would take. You know, if the technology, if we want to eliminate a certain technology, a certain, especially like energy source, then it has to have something better. You can't just point out the flaws in one and expect something to really happen. The problem with fossil fuels and non-renewable resources was a thing that was being recognized in the 70s, and we're still sort of working through it. And while we're still using those resources, obviously at some point we're going to have to make some sort of transfer. And I think that's sort of what Asimov is looking forward and thinking about, this sort of like, well, what is it going to be? What is this new thing going to be? And that if something makes life easy, that we'll sort of ignore all the nasty parts about it, or the suggestion of something nasty. So it's up to someone who wants us to get away from that sort of thing to figure out some other way to tempt us away. It has to be something attractive. It can't just be, you can't just shake your finger at it, and say it's bad. That won't work. People won't give up things. They won't give up easy, relaxing, and sort of idealized lifestyles for, because something is bad, and that's pretty much holds true. I mean, I definitely think that's a pretty accurate statement. And I guess a little bit of spoiler here. A couple of things that I really liked. I liked that in the alien sort of section in the para-universe, I should have been saying that all along, in the para-universe, the soft ones sort of debate for a while as to whether they're not just machines that are being made by the hard ones and who will die. And that this sort of moving on process, which they know is coming, is really just their clockwork, so to speak, winding down. So there's sort of a crisis that happens there. The third part of the novel is this sort of very minor character from the first part of the novel who is sort of basically just had to leave the science community because he was sort of driven out by the creator of the electron pump. And he goes to the moon. And the stuff on the moon for me was interesting, but probably because I've seen so much other talk about the same subject before, like what it would mean for humanity to live in low gravity and what that looks like, and the sort of like their culture. And that's maybe the only part of the book that I feel like is maybe a bit, I don't want to say dated, but if you've already read that stuff, it's not like it's going to be like, oh, that's so cool, so neat, I never thought of that. I don't really feel that way. I think he kept it interesting. He tried to keep it interesting and kept it moving, but it's just sort of things that I guess I'd already read, I guess. And that's just me, I suppose. So it's, again, very minor. It's not a problem. I think that he does a good job. Asimov generally does a great job of keeping the story moving forward and not letting it drag. Really great, hard sci-fi book. And again, like I said before, I think something that if you're interested in hard science fiction, that this is a really great place to start. Or if you know somebody who's interested, this is a really great book to recommend. And also just a really great standalone novel of Asimov's. Some people might complain that there's not a lot of character development because the characters keep shifting. I don't think that's a problem. So they end up being, I wouldn't say that they're caricatures of characters, but they're not fully fleshed out because we don't have any of these characters go for anything more than like novella length. I don't think in a story like this it's really characters that you're coming for. You're coming for just an interesting sort of science fiction story, and that's really what the focus is. It's focus on the science fiction ideas, and also just sort of like what I feel like is really like a problem with like how humans work, like the problems of like humans being petty and foolish and not doing what's right and fighting amongst themselves or not being able to give up something that's dangerous or harmful, and that we have to sort of like figure out a way to work with human psychology to get the right things done. And I appreciated Asimov sort of intuiting that and really doing a real skillful job of keeping that in there without it being preachy. So let's talk about the Soft Ones entry in Barlowe's Guide. This has been a long time. I've been trying to make this video, by the way. I think I've made it a few times and then deleted it, so it's good. It's good. I'm excited to finally be doing this. And I will say that this is another thing which I think is funny. The Soft One entry in this book is very similar to the Uchjin entry in a sense from Jack Chalker's Exiles of the Will of Souls. Very similar in a sense. So here's the illustration for the Soft Ones from Barlowe's Guide. It's like a yellowy cloud, right? And then they can solidify themselves. I love these little details, and I love it's like so much time was spent on this detail, and it's like it just looks like a yellow smear, and it kind of does. But I just love it because Barlowe got to pick these things. He decided which ones, and I like that he did try to do something. He tried to do something interesting here, keeping in with the description of the book. That was very important to Barlowe. That was the reason he made Barlowe's Guide. He would look at these science fiction books, and he would look at the covers, and he'd think, that doesn't look anything like the alien that was in the book. And his parents were natural history illustrators, and so he took sort of a natural history approach to the extraterrestrials and this guide, and Barlowe's Guide to Extraterrestrials. let's see if it has anything interesting to say. The little detail does say this hardened extruded pseudopod enables a soft one to handle solid objects, and it has quotation marks on handle. Yes, and the soft ones have three sexes, emotionals, rationals, and parentals. And all three of them have to come together to make a new soft one, and they have three children, one of each of the three genders, I guess you could say. There's not exactly genders or types, I suppose. They have to have one of each, and after the third soft one is born, the third one, usually the emotional, which is the hardest one to make, then they all move on. Just a really fun novel. You could tell that he's having a lot of fun, and I really appreciated that this is like hard science fiction. There's a lot of like crazy speculation going on and crazy things, but it's all hard sci-fi. It's really a feat. I think he even said that he had a difficult time. Asimov said, I think he had a difficult time with that third section of the book. That it was maybe a bit over his head when he was writing. So I think it's fun. I think it's fun. He pushed himself, and he ended up ultimately really liking what he did. And I really enjoyed it too. So that's it. Thank you very much. My name is Virgil, and this is Literally Books. You can like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. I appreciate if you do. Bye.